It provokes us. It inspires us. It stirs our imagination, feeds our creativity, and sets us in motion. It takes us places we never thought possible. It is freedom, experimentation, pain, and joy. It creates new myths and reinvents old ones. It soothes the weary and offers us hope, touches our very souls. It breaks new ground, breaks down walls, and brings us together. Art connects us with ourselves and drives us forward, telling our stories and giving us voice. Art shows us who we are. Arts are part of us all.
Welcome, bonjour, kwekwe. My name is Michelle Chawla. I'm the Director General of Strategy, Public Affairs and Arts Engagement at the Canada Council for the Arts. I'm delighted to welcome you to our 2022 annual public meeting. Today, I'm speaking to you from the Council's Gagegawin Room at 150 Elgin in Ottawa. I would like to begin by acknowledging that our offices are located on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence here reaches back to time immemorial. The Council recognizes the Algonquins as the customary keepers and defenders of the Ottawa River watershed and its tributaries. We honor their long history of welcoming many nations to this beautiful territory and uphold and uplift the voice and values of our host nation. The Council respects and affirms the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across this land. The Council has honored and will continue to honor the commitments to self-determination and sovereignty that we have made to Indigenous nations and peoples. The Council acknowledges the historical oppression of lands, cultures, and the original peoples in what we now know as Canada, and believes that the arts contribute to our healing and decolonizing journey. This land acknowledgement was developed by members of the Algonquin community, and I thank them for their generosity and collaboration. Cette année, notre Assemblée publique doit...
This year, our public assembly still needs to adjust to the pandemic. For security reasons, some segments are live and others are pre-recorded. The arts sector is still being hit hard by the pandemic, but things are changing rapidly. The arts have an opportunity to reach a wider audience again, and that's exciting. But we have to keep in mind that the pandemic is not over yet, and the pace of recovery is uncertain. The sector, as well as artists and workers, will feel the effects of the pandemic for a long time to come. I can assure you that the thoughts of our entire staff are with the artists, groups, and collectives. Our thoughts are also with the many people around the world who are experiencing the horrors of not only is world peace threatened, but on a human level, millions of refugees have to live in precarious situations, and their numbers are constantly increasing. Of course, we are standing in solidarity with Ukraine, which is currently going through a terrible ordeal. Our solidarity with the Ukrainian people is expressed through the Council's participation in the economic sanctions of Canada and the international community, and through efforts to safeguard Ukraine's cultural heritage. Last week, we made an important announcement in this regard through the Canadian Commission for UNESCO, which, I will remind you, is a member of the Council. We will contribute to UNESCO's Emergency Heritage Fund to protect threatened cultural heritage, particularly in Ukraine.
I'll now remind you of our agenda for today. First, the Council's Chair, Jessie Wente, will speak. Then I will return with an update on our achievements this past year. After that, you'll hear from our Director and CEO, Simon Brault. There will be after that a question period with Simon, who will also be joined by Carolyn Warren, Director General of Arts Granting Programs here at the Council. You can submit your questions in the form that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. We also received your questions by email before today's event. You can choose the language of this broadcast by clicking on the link on the upper right corner. We will also be posting a video of this meeting for you to watch on our website in April. I'd like to thank the simultaneous interpretation team as well as the sign language interpretation teams. And remember, you can follow along on Twitter by keeping an eye on the hashtag @CanadaCouncil22. Je vous rappelle que vous pouvez nous suivre sur Twitter.
I'm reminding you that you can follow us on Twitter on following the hashtag ArtsCouncil22.
From the group, The Hallucination. So our agenda is full. Let's get started. We'll begin with the Council's Chair, Jesse Wente.
Merci, Michelle. I'm speaking to you today from Tkaronto, the traditional territory of many nations, and under the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, which reminds us of our agreement to live peacefully together and share the abundance of this place, and the obligation to maintain that for future generations. This is my second annual public meeting as chair of the Canada Council for the Arts. And once again this year, we face many challenges for the arts and wider society. Through these trying times, I've found it inspiring to witness artists, arts workers, and audiences come together with a powerful call for a more just and equitable arts sector in Canada. I'm proud to say this call is front and center of the Council's 2021 to 26 strategic plan, Art Now More Than Ever. The plan is a roadmap to guide the organization and the wider sector through the many unknowns ahead. It envisions a transformation of the arts in Canada to include, reflect, and celebrate all of us in all of our diversity across this country more strongly. This vision responds to several historically underserved and marginalized communities: Indigenous, Black, racialized, deaf and disability, 2S, LGBTQ and gender diverse, women, and people at the intersections of all of these groups. Of course, the Council has been on a longer journey toward a more just and equitable arts sector that predates the current strategic plan. Several years ago, the Council made a commitment to support Indigenous arts in a way that respects and upholds the cultural sovereignty of Indigenous peoples and concepts of self-determination. One of the ways we did this, and will continue to do this, is through the Creating, Knowing, and Sharing the Arts and Cultures of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Peoples program. Under the current strategic plan, the Council will deepen its relationship with the communities it serves across the country to support them on their own terms. In the months ahead, for example, the Council will do this through its support of the 2022 Arctic Arts Summit. The summit is a partnership between the Council and the Government of Yukon. It will take place in June 2022, bringing together representatives of the Indigenous nations and Arctic countries in the circumpolar region. It is a summit by the North, for the North, that will center the voices, visions, and lived realities of the North in Canada with strong Indigenous leadership and engagement. It will amplify artists, cultural workers, and creative leaders from across the region, an important opportunity to share, learn, and grow. The summit includes an online program that is open to all, with live streamed events, visual galleries, profiles of artists, and much more. I invite you to explore these online experiences at arcticartssummit.ca. As both the title and the principle lying at the center of our strategic plan, Art Now More Than Ever, acknowledges the vital role art and artists have played in helping us navigate the challenges of the past couple of years, of providing entertainment, comfort, joy, and love. It's also a call to imagine, for artists and their work to help all of us imagine our future together, to envision a shared future that meets the challenges of today with the solutions of tomorrow, and to help form the community bonds needed to bring that future into existence. In closing, I'd like to thank the Government of Canada for its ongoing confidence in the Canada Council for the Arts and the work that we do. I'd also like to acknowledge the Council's staff, its executive management team, Director and CEO Simon Brault, and my colleagues on the board whose diligent work and dedication over the past year have allowed us to respond to the pandemic while also maintaining our regular activities. I'm deeply proud of what we've achieved together this past year, and I look forward to the accomplishments ahead. Chimigwich.
Thank you, Jesse. The pandemic continues to exert a lot of pressure on the entire arts sector. In spite of the difficulties, the Council has responded to the needs of the community. During the pandemic, the Council supported the arts by creating employment opportunities for artists as well as promoting digital outreach and audience engagement. Last year, the Council provided $377 million in grants, including $62.8 million in emergency support funds for COVID through the federal government. This year, the Council has disbursed a record number of funds in support of the sector, $455 million in grants, including $141 million in COVID-19 emergency support and sector recovery funds. In April 2021, we launched our 5-year strategic plan, Art More Than Ever. It is designed to help rebuild an arts sector that, as the pandemic has reminded us, is essential to our society, but a rebuilding for the better, on a more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. This plan includes, among others, 3 major directions: investing in reconstruction and innovation, increasing the benefits of the arts to society, encouraging and enhancing collaboration and partnerships. These directions are accompanied by key actions that will guide our work and investment over the next few years. Of course, all of these actions will be implemented progressively. The Council has begun to share with the community the actions that are included in the plan. At the end of November, we held 2 virtual meetings with over 200 individuals and organizations from the arts sector. The conversations centered around 3 themes: innovation, equity, and partnerships. The conversations were enlightening for us, and we had the opportunity to answer many questions. More meetings will be held in 2022 so that we can continue the dialogue. And since the last few months have been full of twists and turns, we will also need to remain flexible and agile so that we can make adjustments. I can assure you that we intend to remain humble and transparent. I invite you to check the board's website to learn more about our strategic plan and its directions. I will now turn the floor over to our Chief Executive Officer and Director, Simon Brault, who will provide more information on the Council's plan and vision for the coming years.
This year. For more than 2 years now, we have been living in uncertainty. And the next few years might also be filled with more of the same. But this should not lead us to adopt a posture of inertia or withdrawal. On the contrary, this long crisis requires us to respond in new and inspired ways. The last 2 years have heightened our awareness of the inequities in our society and in our own sector, inequities that often feed in our ways of thinking, ways of working, and many other systemic approaches. Of course, the problem we face today get back much further. But these days, we can no longer ignore them. We have to think differently, and we have to act differently. And this is true for anyone in our sector and obviously for the Canada Council as the main public funder of the arts in this country. We have to think and act with more intentionality to achieve true inclusivity. Over the past year, we have initiated courageous and meaningful conversations with the community and with various stakeholders about the midterm and long-term future of the arts sector. Like some of you, we will be present and active at the National Summit for the Recovery of the Arts, Culture, and Heritage sectors on May 2nd and 3rd, taking place here in Ottawa. The summit will be hosted by the Minister of Canadian Heritage, Pablo Rodriguez. Our commitment to participate on platforms that contribute to the sustainable development of the sector and therefore society is unwavering as ever. We are counting on the spirit of collaboration and communication because the arts have an important role to play in making true and lasting societal change happen. Today's annual public meeting is more than just a review. It's a moment to sketch out the coming year's milestones. Nous devons amorcer une transition sociétale.
We must begin a societal transition by focusing on the elimination of racism and discrimination, focusing on decolonization in people's minds, in systems, and in institutions. We must also call on our creativity and our ability to influence in order to take place in the world battle against climate change that preoccupies the population and especially youth here and everywhere on Earth. There's an urgence also to have better social infrastructure that must include our sector as well. Too often, it is accompanied by bad conditions for the lives and well-being of its artists. The rebuilding and revitalization of the arts must lead to a more just, equitable, and sustainable sector for each and every one. The arts sector showed itself to be vital during the pandemic, but that essential character must be affirmed with more vigor, especially with more public support. Also, with more space given to the arts in our institutions, in society, in the truth and reconciliation process, in the collaboration and partnerships that focus on innovation, in our personal and collective development. The arts must be at the heart of our human development. To achieve this, the sector must have the tools and the means to take risks. Right now, we are focusing here at the Council on innovation as a way to accent that risk-taking and push away the familiar frontiers. Our Innovation Fund is a way to support the arts as they tackle the challenges they face by taking risks, trying new approaches, and adopting a sustainable perspective on the proposals they put forward. Right now, innovation is a way to rethink what wasn't working, to maximize what we have learned from this pandemic period, especially through digital means, and also develop meaningful partnerships. Innovation can lead to new models and sustainable ones. It can allow to support digital transformation, improve compensation and working conditions for artists, can promote equity, diversity, as well as inclusion, can also allow the addressing of the very real consequences of colonialism. Innovation will also allow us to address climate change and to plead in a new and convincing way for the arts within our society. Obviously, this is the first strategic approach that we have taken because it is time for reconstruction in an innovative way. with the sessions that we've had up till now and through other communication means, we have begun and we will continue this important and fruitful discussion with the sector. I would also like to say a few words on our public lending right program. Despite the pandemic, the program was able to work with a record number of public libraries across the country to fulfill its mandate to create direct payments to the individuals whose literary works are in libraries. This enabled us to make payments to over 18,000 creators last year. And I want to emphasize the wave of love and gratitude that we received at the time when we distributed the checks this year. It's much appreciated here at the Council, and I think that resonates a lot with the public deciders. In closing, I would like to mention that the Council's Art Bank is celebrating its 50th anniversary. We will be unveiling activities in the coming months and a series of initiatives that will allow us to properly mark this anniversary and assure its continued existence. Merci. Thank you.
In the spirit of our ongoing conversation with one another, we'll now begin our question and answer period. We will begin with a few questions that we received by email in advance of today's APM, and then we'll turn to some of the questions we received from you during today's event. Joining us to answer your questions, along with Simon, as I mentioned earlier, is Carolyn Warren, our Director General of Arts Granting Programs. So let's begin with our first question. We received several questions in advance that relate to our recent decision to place a temporary hold on artistic activities taking place in Russia and Belarus, including one from Carmen Rodriguez, who asked why the Council decided to stop funding Russian and Belarusian artists and arts organizations due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, given that it did not do the same with other recent global conflicts. I'll turn to you, Simon, to answer.
Thank you, Carmen, for your question. We decided to join the international movement of sanctioning Russia for the invasion of Ukraine because we think that it was very important to signal to the world and to our colleagues and to the artists in Ukraine our support. We did similar actions in the past, but clearly this is a very unique moment right now. And I believe that the arts, if we want to consider the arts as very important and central in our society, I believe it's just normal that when major conflicts or major tensions like this one are happening in the world, that we take a position, even if it is quite symbolic, and even if we could argue that we could have done it before with other conflicts. Maybe we are now kind of opening a new chapter in terms of reacting and acting when dramas like the one that is happening right now are happening in our world. So thank you again for the question.
Thank you, Simon. The next question was sent to us before today's event by author, editor, and translator Yiling Wang. Quelles sont les actions spécifiques que le Conseil a prévues pour...
What are the specifics that the Council has planned for this year and for the next years for its engagements in equity and also for the racialized authors? Thank you for the question. The new strategic plan addresses this question, as you've already heard from my colleagues, and we've already taken steps very clearly that will allow us to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to move forward the elimination of obstacles of access to our financing. I would like to emphasize first that the support for writers and Black and racialized and Indigenous players is there. We believe strongly that the arts must be more important in the lives of more citizens and therefore better defended and better supported by society. So a few concrete actions for the next 5 years. First, the Council will allocate 50% of the total of funding to projects. That will allow new requests, new applicants to access financing. And even this year, we are in the process of delivering more than 20% to new applicants. We're also going to be earmarking $100 million to Indigenous arts. The Council is also working on a strategy for arts in the North, as you've already heard, in order to reinforce our support and presence for arts in the North. We're diversifying our collection in the Art Bank, and we're revising our prizes to ensure that these recognize all of the artistic contribution and literary contributions to our society. We will also participate actively in dialogues with arts bodies and all participants in the sector in order to support the strategies and initiatives that will move forward on equity, diversity, and inclusion, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and the battle against discrimination in all forms, certainly, and including against women. Thank you for the question.
Let's now turn to Ria Beaumont, who submitted a recorded question to us in advance.
Thank you very much for taking my question. I'm pianist and composer Dr. Ria Beaumont. I'd like to know, in light of the economic devastation of the global COVID-19 pandemic, if the Canada Council is planning on integrating a need-based component in its applications for grants, or if it's going to start a separate set of grants that have a need-based component in addition to artistic excellence. Thanks again for taking my question and for all that you do for arts in Canada.
Okay, j'ai pas eu le signe. Mais thank you very much for the question. It's the question of the financial situation of the artists in Canada right now is a top priority for the Canada Council. Obviously, as a funder of the arts, we don't compensate for loss of revenue, or our first role is not to support the revenues of the artists. But when we do the granting activities, obviously we take into consideration their needs, and basically what we do when we support a lot of the work for creation, for instance, is to buy time for the artists to develop their art, develop their work, develop their creation. But the Council is also very much involved in terms of advocating for and giving advice to the government in order to expand the social security net. And I think that during the pandemic, it was probably a moment, a very important moment, when we saw that it was possible to extend the support to artists and cultural workers as to any other workers experiencing loss of revenue because of the pandemic. So I think it will be a big discussion, a big conversation in our society. How can we make sure that in the future we find ways to compensate the work, visible work and the invisible work of the artists and cultural workers in the future? But clearly it's an important consideration, and it will remain an important consideration for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Next, we go to Clayton Windat, who also submitted a recorded question.
Hello, Canada Council for the Arts. My name is Clayton Windat, and I am the Executive Director of the Artist Run Centers and Collectives Conference, also known as ARCA. Thank you for offering me this opportunity to send my question in as a pre-recorded video. As an artist and arts administrator myself, I often ask questions based on what I hear in the arts sector and provoke you, the Canada Council, for a response, as I believe in your ability to confirm and reaffirm your mission and mandate. There's a lot of misunderstandings and misinformation out there. Many artists and groups feel that your new funding structures are departures from supporting artists, that money could be going away from the arts. Considering this, my question is, how is the newly announced Innovation Fund supporting artists? I hope this question provokes a response to larger issues of communication and that you consider how programs connect to your core values. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you for this question and for the opportunity to explain, in fact, how this new Innovation Fund does support individuals, individual artists and arts workers, as well as groups and organizations, and how it does so both directly and indirectly. The goal, of course, is to support the building of a more sustainable arts sector, and we've been talking about this throughout our meeting today, and to make the arts more relevant and accessible to more people. I will say off the top that we do know that that word innovation can be challenging for some. For the Council, innovation is one of the ways that we will be supporting artists and arts workers to address the many challenges that have been that we're facing today and which Simon has described earlier in the meeting today. I do want to say that the Innovation Fund, our investment in this Innovation Fund, is in fact only 13% of our overall granting budgets over the next 5 years. And those other programs, as you know, will continue to support all kinds of activities, from research to creation to production, dissemination, public engagement, and professional development. So again, directly supporting individual artists. The Innovation Fund is really intended to build capacity in the sector, to find new ways to deal with these challenges that we've been living with for such a long time, but that have clearly been exacerbated by the pandemic. Many of these challenges, as Simon has pointed out, are not specific to the arts sector. And I'm thinking here, of course, of the current climate crisis, the reckoning with issues of social justice and equity, and the need to address Indigenous truth and reconciliation. We share these concerns with society broadly. But then there are also challenges that are really relevant and resonant in our own sector. And here I'm thinking about the chronic underremuneration of individual artists and arts workers, the unsustainability of our current models, and the ongoing gaps we see and continue to see in digital understanding and capacity. So innovation, which is quite simply a way to solve problems and bring about change, is an approach that we believe to be essential for the arts ecosystem to help us find new and more sustainable ways to work. We know this is challenging during a difficult, protracted health crisis, and many of us are stretched and discouraged after the past 2 years, which is really why we designed the fund to give easy access to individuals, to groups, and to organizations at every level of readiness to take on projects that will create change. We created a variety of pathways to these new funds, from small-scale grants that allow you to identify a problem, and imagine a plan, seek out appropriate partners, to mid-sized grants that actually enable partnering, implementing, and piloting, all the way to very significant grants, up to $1 million for multi-partner projects that will have a clear and significant impact on the sector as a whole. So the fund is about individual artists and arts workers. They can apply as individuals, but they will also benefit indirectly from the changes we hope we will be supporting in terms of creating better working conditions, more sustainable business models going forward. And in terms of support for artistic creation and individual artists, we've actually increased our funding to individual artists significantly in the past 2 years, as both Michelle and Simon have mentioned, particularly in making sure that many millions of emergency funds from the government have gone directly into the hands and pockets of those who need it most. On a final note, I do want to say that the new fund has clearly encouraged partnerships both within the arts sector, but also between the arts sector and other sectors. And I want to be clear that this does not mean that the funds are leaving the arts sector. To be eligible to receive a Strategic Innovation Fund grant, you have to have an eligible Canada Council profile. What we have done by encouraging this kind of partnership is to ensure that we can leverage the investments we make in innovation with co-investments from outside of our sector, which will also enable the arts to expand their reach and their relevance across society. And this will have a very profound direct and indirect benefit for artists and arts workers across the country. So thank you again for the question.
Thank you, Carolyn. We'll now address some of the questions we received live during this event. C'est une question en français. Donc, de nombreuses questions.
In French, a lot of questions and comments have been received during the event on our plan of relaunching the sector. How do you think your programs will change to meet the needs of the arts sector? Simon. In fact, it's an excellent question. The CCA programs will not necessarily change. We already have, with a new funding model, we already have a certain number of programs that let us cover the whole spectrum of what is being done in the arts sector. And we also published our financial objectives. Carolyn and Warren spoke about it. The Council for the Arts is the only council in the country that has such a huge portion of its budget that is supporting project 50%, and the remaining 50% is supporting the operations and the organizations. What is going to evolve in the coming years is the attention given to a certain content or proposal that comes from the arts sector. That is very important for us to always be able to react to what is being proposed by artists and what is coming from the sector, in fact, but also what it can be amplified at the right time. Initiatives or projects that can have an impact in Canada or abroad. Carolyn Warren was speaking to our innovation fund. This fund is especially interesting right now because it lets us build bridges with other sectors of the society that are trying to face, that are having challenges that are very similar to the ones that we see in our sector. In the next few years, I expect to see an evolution in the content of artistic creation and the way that it is being created and disseminated, and also how it's going to be linked to other sectors of this society. So we have to keep listening and be in symbiosis and synchronicity with artists and arts organizations. Thank you so much for the question.
Carolyn, this next question is for you. So we're also receiving questions on whether any of the recent programs like Digital Strategy Fund or Digital Originals that were popular, will they be making a comeback?
That's a very good question, and I won't say that they will not. What I will say is that we are very responsive and flexible in our Strategic Innovation Fund, which now does have 2 digital grants that are available for all kinds of different projects. In fact, they're broader than Digital Originals and Digital Now, and I would recommend looking at the guidelines for those grants. Those are not intended to stay in place for the full 5 years of the current plan, but we have so much flexibility within our Strategic Innovation Fund that we may well decide, in response to what we hear and the proposals that come to us from the sector, we may well add additional digital initiatives, sometimes one-off or over a short period of time in the future. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Carolyn. So, c'est une dernière question, et Simon, c'est pour...
One last question. Simon, it's for you. Several organizations have received specific support during the pandemic. How will the Council support the finalization of these projects in the following year? That's an excellent question. During the pandemic, we had additional funds from the government, additional support, and the first year in our entire history, this year we had $500 million in our budget. we supported a much greater number of artists and collectives and organizations more than ever in our history. The greatest concern now is to make sure that those who have been supported for the first time by the Council can continue making progress and continue receiving support. That is one of the reasons why we insisted on protecting the 50% of all of our resources to support our projects. And at the same time, we are working on having some basic funding. We do not want to increase the basic funding by using the funds that are earmarked for projects, because otherwise we would close the door to new ways. For us, it is important to be dynamic. For the future of arts, we have to be able to consolidate what is most mature and also be able to work with what is emerging in inadequate conditions. So we are truly looking at all of these issues at this time, but we want to make sure there is a continuity and that individuals who were supported thanks to the additional funds that we received during the pandemic will not be abandoned. There will not be, and that they can continue. For us, during the pandemic, one of the huge concerns that the Council had was to be able to help organizations not to go bankrupt or implode because of the pandemic, but we continued throughout the pandemic to support very strongly the independent scene. For us, it is very important that at the end of the pandemic, we can not only find again these organizations that existed pre-pandemic, but also be able to create a huge diversity. So we really tried to find the right balance between supporting the independent scenes and individuals and organizations for which we have a responsibility as the Council. Thank you very much for the question. Thank you, Simon and Caroline. So it is time to end our question period. I would like to thank all of our interpreters. I would also like to thank Dawn Ross, who has won the Walter Carson 2022 prize for the slideshow at the opening.
In the coming days. And to close our 2022 annual public meeting, we'd like to share a pre-recorded performance from electric powwow duo, The Hallucination. Please enjoy the performance. Thank you and merci.
What's up? I'm Tim. And I'm Bear Witness.
And we are The Hallucination.
Thank you for inviting us to the 2022 annual public meeting. As past recipients of numerous grants, we understand the important role that the Canada Council for the Arts plays in the development of artists, both here in Canada and beyond.
The world needs more art in all its forms, and we're happy to be here to help promote that in our music. What I forgot is better
it's quiet for me. Time to put the temper tantrums to the quiet corner. Hush, that's enough, said the ruler. No suckers allowed to break bread or asunder. The daylight, lightning and the thunder. Sun, moon, and stars and the hunger. Abundance in bundles, blessings and troubles. Towers and tunnels, views and valleys, waves and peaks. Streets you from, sun, planet Earth. And ain't scared of no Mars attack. What type of bars is that? Stay off my jack. I'm out they corny riot garments. Top 5 dial on them. Super fly, slicker, top pro. Eagle diving on them. You why you lying, homie? You won't play with my emotions, smoky. Big chief, heart rate, big beat, B-E-Y, I seen straight jacket, come clean, big said it was a dream, now it's a living thing, with you and living kings, I mean it, I mean Yasin in the R-E-D, I mean it, original nation, with Pansalida, I mean it, jacket come clean, Yasin and Yasin and the R.E.P. Original nation, we pan solid, we with you and living, you know with you and living. A tribe called the R.E.P. A tribe called R.E.P. A tribe called the R.E.P. A tribe called Illuminati. Emergency on planet Earth. The currency is murder, you a man of worth. They say the day is coming, drumming that you can't reverse. Watch the banner burn before the cannon bursts. Don't chase an illusion, the nation hallucina. Hallelujah, taste of the future, the people, the shower, the pistol, the coward, the trace of the suture. Lonely martyrs, magic carpets, dirty blankets, Coca-Cola, soul controller, holy waters. Middle East mode, sand glorious. Cheat code in Babylonian, the Orient. My superhero got the people power. Yasin and Yasin, you should heed the hour. With you and living kings, I mean it, I mean it. Yasin and Yasin in the R.E.D. I mean it, original nation, with Pansalida, I mean it, straight jacket come clean, Yasin and Yasin and the R.E.P.
Thanks again, Canada Council, for all your years of support.
Yahweh.